Hi, everyone. Nicole here, and I am super excited to share one of my favorite topics of all time, branding, and specifically how to build a powerful brand. I love this topic because it's very rare that you get to teach a topic where it's everywhere. It influences everything from almost all of, well, not almost, I'd say probably all of the buying choices that we make, from how we position our own businesses to how we relate with all of the companies that are around us. Um, but people know so little about it. It really gets into our subconscious. And from my background in psychology and my love of all things branding, when those two pieces come together, it's a topic that I'm super passionate about. So that's just to say, I'm really excited to share this time with you guys today. This is an interactive workshop, and so you'll have access. You should be able to see whether this is the replay and you're grabbing this from the email, or if you're in the chat box, you can grab this from the chat box too. So however you're watching this, you should have the slides. So grab those. If you want to work off of the slides, that would be awesome. Some people, like myself, as much as I am trying to digitize my life, I will always just be paper, and not only one, but a selection of pens. I saw a workshop recently where they were talking about right brain versus left brain. And I know there's a lot of debate around, um, is that really true or not? So let's just take that with a grain of salt. He was talking about right brain versus left brain, and how at their workshop they had several different ways for people to like take notes. And one was, people had their laptops, and some people love taking digital notes. They had a notebook for people where if you flipped it on one side, it was more just like blank paper. And then the other side, they had like a really nice grid if you're like a perfectionist and you like to take very detailed notes. And then they had butcher paper all over the table, and a bunch of pens and pencils and markers, and you can kind of like take your notes like that too. And I thought that was pretty cool. And so I'm gonna, as a creative myself, I want to invite you to take notes. Grab the slides. There's lots of places on the slides to make notes, or grab your notebook, or whatever you do. Just make sure that as you watch this, that you are allowing this to be the interactive workshop that it is, instead of just listening with like one ear while you're like doing something else over here, and then you got the phone out and you're Instagramming over here. So if you're going to take the time, let's take the time to really work together on building your brand. The way that this workshop is going to be structured is there'll be some teaching in the beginning. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, since I know that some of you are brand new to Brand Better and to myself. So I'll take a little bit of time to introduce myself, not too much of your time, because I know that that's a webinar hosts tend to spend like 20 minutes just talking about themselves. And you're like, yeah, let's get to the meat and the potatoes of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to do some teaching. We're going to start at the beginning. So what I found, so here is one thing that I know across the board, is that whether you are just starting in business or whether you've been in business for multiple years, most people are unaware what branding actually is. And so I'm going to start with dispelling some myths, and we're going to start with very basic vocabulary, because branding is a very complicated topic. But I'm going to try to make it fun and have some examples as well. So in a few seconds, I'm going to switch over to my slides so you can see those, and we'll go from there. So as I'm switching over and sharing my screen, okay, I have, if you guys use Canva before, canva.com. If not, I definitely recommend it. I used to do everything in like PowerPoint and Keynote, and I've moved over to Canva. It's so easy. And what I love about it is that you can actually present things directly from Canva. So I'm going to do my presentation right here. So today we're talking about how to build a powerful brand. And you know what? Let's not start here at what is branding. We will get to that in a second. Let's actually start with just a little introduction about myself. So, if you haven't already encountered me or come across, and maybe you were in saw something that I was sponsoring or someplace where I was teaching, or perhaps you saw an ad and you picked up the brand planner toolkit, which if you guys don't have that, we'll make sure that you have access to that as well, because it's a good companion to the work that we're doing here. Some of the exercises are the same, but in the brand planner toolkit, the free toolkit, you get the photography guide that's going to help you with planning your brand photography, but you'll also have some more exercises too that are a little bit more in the line of like brand audit, which is having a look holistically about your brand and the brand assets, and seeing what you need to work on. And that's part of what we're going to do today too. So I am Nicole Harlow. Like I said, I'm the CEO and brand strategist at Brand Better, which is a company that I've run now for about 6 years. But I've been an entrepreneur for 13. So what's cool about that is I was in my 20s when I had my last paid job with a boss. And I always knew that I love traveling and I love adventure and I love creation. So I was not really sure what it was going to be, but I knew that those are my kind of North Star principles, right? And there have been some common themes through my 13 year of entrepreneurship, because branding and websites and design and brand strategy is not the first thing that I did. And it wasn't the second or the third or the fourth or the fifth or the sixth even. I actually got to brand strategy and brand design through building so many of my own brands. That was really my entry point. I My very first business, well, it was probably way back when I was a teenager, but my first real legitimate business was more in the arts and crafts scene. So making soaps and making earrings and cards and things, creative things, but just more like a hobby, right? Versus a business. And then I trained as a yoga teacher, and then that turned into a business for me as well. So I was teaching full time, and then I started a dance studio. So I was teaching dance classes. I had dancers, teachers that were under me. And so that's when it really started to turn into a business. It was a location independent studio. And so we didn't have space, because that was important to me to be able to travel and do retreats and things like that. That moved me into more transformational coaching. I got really excited about astrology and energy healing, and that moved me into, surprisingly, women's health. And so every couple of years, I was doing new trainings in different topics, and so I got really deep into women's hormonal health and nutrition, naturopathy, natural medicine, herbalism. Lots of cool topics. And that's when I started working clinically one-on-one with women, and started a popular YouTube channel, started growing my Instagram following around the menstrual cycle. And that's when I really, really got really into building an online business, because I knew I didn't want to be one-on-one in a clinic. That made me feel too brick and mortar and location dependent. And so we're going back now several years, but I spent a few years really cutting my teeth on building online businesses, building online programs, membership sites, sales funnels, social media, YouTube channel, content creation. At the time, I had a new and noteworthy and top 25 podcasts in the self-help section called Spirited Entrepreneur. So I was getting used to interviewing and being interviewed, creating content, creating a content calendar. And so up until this year, so that was 12 years in business, I did everything myself. So if it was out in my world, whether it was editing videos, getting podcast guests, learning how to build websites, membership sites, brands, etc., I am the type of person who is always excited to learn how to do it myself. And I think now that I have a team, it's actually made me a really great CEO and a really great boss because I've done every part of the job. And so I'm able to give good feedback. And I think that there's a nice balance to strike because I think I realized, especially in the last couple of years, that if I really wanted to level up my brand, I needed to be prepared to invest in my business. And in the past, I didn't really believe this. And let me tell you, there is a real magic to investing. Once I started actually investing in professionals, I followed the advice of many, many wise CEOs that said, make sure that you're hiring for people who are better than you. And I used to think like, well, why would I do that? It's cheaper for me to just do it myself. So a couple years ago, I made a decision to start moving in that direction. There's still a lot of my business that I retained myself. And then the last year, I decided to hire even designers that were better than me. I hired the person that I wanted to pay to rebrand us. And I'll tell you about our rebranding in a second, because I think it will be relevant for all of you guys who are watching. Um, so I got to branding. That's the backstory of all of the different pieces that kind of led up to today. So it's really been building a foundation. And when you look on the surface, all of the different things that I did seem very different, right? Astrology is different from the women's health, which is different from yoga, which is different from this, which is way different from branding and website design. But for me, there's always been an underlying theme, which is empowerment, inspiration, creativity. I got to branding and I got to this path through actually some dark entrepreneurial days when it felt like things weren't really coming together. And I felt like I'd been hearing about this concept of zone of genius. And I'm sure that some of you guys have already bumped up into against this topic, this zone of genius, um, which is really, and that people explain it different ways, but it's like where your core skills or your passion it meets the needs of the world. Or another way to think about it is what people actually pay you for, what people are. Where your expertise and your creativity, and we'll get into this a little bit as we go through the slides. This is kind of similar to your branding sweet spot too. And I kept trying all these different things and I just wasn't fully invested in them. I'd get bored really easily. I thought there was something wrong with me. I was like, why can't I just stick with one thing? I'm looking around and I see everybody else feels like they're sticking with one thing. And why am I not able to? And it took the wisdom of a very good friend. I wasn't really seeing it in myself, where she said to me that what I was actually doing was the branding process. What I really liked was that first initial creative burst when a project is just being birthed, when you get to come up with a name and color palette and create the online digital presence for it, whether it's social media or website. And I loved that part. I just didn't know that that's something I can make a career out of because I didn't go to school for graphic design. My degrees, I have a master's degree in women's health, sexuality, and gender studies. My undergraduate is in psychology. My certifications were in nutrition and traditional naturopathy and yoga. How am I qualified to be a branding specialist? How am I even qualified to be a designer? And so I decided to just see what happens. And so that was 6 years later. And I've been busy ever since. And the portfolio continues to grow. The clients that we work with get lovelier and lovelier. And now that I have a team, the work that we're producing is even better. And so that is my story and how I got to branding. And I like to share that because it's not just about me and learning about me, although maybe you're curious about that. I like to show my story of how I bootstrapped this entire business. I like to show the story that the career and the business that I'm building consistently, that I'm now that I'm the CEO of, is not what I studied. It's not what I intended to do. And so I believe in embracing gracefully and excitedly, enthusiastically embracing the pivot. And I know a lot of us who are here today, who are listening and tuning in, especially in the last year, we've been asked and in a lot of ways forced to accept a pivot. Some of us are, excuse me, some of us are brick and mortar businesses who are trying to figure out how to survive in an online world. Some of us are got laid off from jobs and are thinking how to start a business. Some of us have been in online business for years, but trying to figure out how to cope with competition. You know, the market is so flooded with lots of new businesses. So I think for most of us, we can sit here and we can empathize with pivot because it's been a story for us. So I like to share my story just to show the power of pivoting as well, you know, and the power of moving with your enthusiasm. I do a lot of brand audit strategy sessions, which we can talk about at the end of today's class. But I do them, and one of the most powerful things is actually asking people what they're passionate about. There's not just what's the right idea, what's the right strategy, I get asked a lot, like, what's the perfect social media platform to be on? Or what kind of sales funnel should I have? Should it be A or B or C? And I like to really dig into, you know, you need to be grounded in strategy, but also where is your passion and enthusiasm? Because I find that there's so much power in moving in that direction. So that's me. That was my pivot. Here I am 6 years later, very creatively satisfied with the work that I do and really excited to teach branding. It's um, it's really powerful, and I want to share just very, very briefly, I promise, just one thing that I hope makes you feel excited about branding. Because this is a personal story. I used to share stories here about clients that we worked with, that we rebranded, that we redesigned their logo, that we redesigned a sales funnel or internal documents or some kind of redesign, right? Or we just helped them clarify what their message was or their social media content calendar for the year, something like that. I would share like their statistics and their success. But I actually have my own very recent story that I wanted to share with you guys. So about 6 weeks ago, I signed up as a company. We signed up for a pretty expensive sponsorship and it stretched our budget. It was something that we'd never done before. And I looked around, and even though we were busy with work and getting the right kind of clients, getting the right kind of finding the right avatar, I was looking around and I said, you know what? I'm not happy with the way that our brand looks. I'm like so busy, and sometimes it's like, you know, when you're so close to your industry, sometimes it's hard to do the work for yourself. You know, you're just like, oh, we're branding specialists, but I, I'm not sure that I love our brand. I wasn't sure that I loved our message. I definitely didn't like our website. It felt good, but not good enough. It didn't feel like the caliber that I wanted to be. It didn't feel like the level of performance that I wanted to have for our brand. Our internal documents were outdated. So there was a lot of stuff that needed to be done. And so when we went all in on this sponsorship and it was very quick, I said, you know, we need to turn around a new brand. We need to redo this. And what was the other thing is I was ready to raise my prices. I had been sitting with the same prices since 2016 or 2017. And I really didn't think that I felt like my own branding was holding me back, but it took a while to be able to invest the time. And I didn't have a teammate to be able to do it. So I felt like I had taken the design as far as my skills would take me. But this year, when I hired Sabrina, who's our lead designer, who actually works in-house, meaning that she works for an agency doing like corporate logos. So she loves working with us because she gets to do fun projects for solopreneurs and small businesses, which can be a lot more fun than creating like a corporate logo. That tends to be a little bit more like, you know, they have very clear guidelines and there's not a lot. So she loves having the freedom. She was the first person I ever found that I could trust to rebrand my own logo. So we gave ourselves a goal of 2 weeks, and we turned around everything that you'll see on our new website, everything on our documents. We came up with brand new concepts, color schemes, internal documents. So any of the brand planner or the slides here. I tell you all this because what we were not expecting is that after we rebranded, at the same time, we doubled our prices. And I'm so excited to share with you guys. This last month has been our best month so far in business, by multiple percentage points, probably by 3 or 4 times over what we've normally done. We've done business in the multiple tens of thousands just this month. I mean, it's exciting, and that was really down to the rebrand. But the rebranding your business and rebranding the website and the documents, it seems like it's the other thing that I did is I went and I got professional pictures taken. That was for the very first time. I was always like, I'll just get my own camera. I'll just take my own pictures. It'll be fine. I went and paid for a professional photo shoot. And I share this story not just as a celebration of a really big win, but as a really core framework when we talk about branding. You're in business to help the world. Obviously, you're in business to make a big impact on the lives of others, but we're also in business to make money, or else we just have a hobby, right? So we want to make sure that we're making money. We want to make sure that we're able to raise our prices, work with really high quality customers. And the magical thing that happens with branding, whether you're starting from the first time or whether you're rebranding, is that it can provide a tremendous amount of confidence and congruence. And I saw that happen firsthand for us. And like I said, sometimes when you're near the specialist, often the thing that falls to the wayside is your own, what you're a specialist in. So, like you're like a trainer, but you like can't seem to get to the gym. So that was kind of our story for a little bit. And it's amazing to see what happens when you have confidence in your brand, when you look at it. And for the first time in a while, I feel like I was able to look at our brand and say, you know what, we've doubled our prices, but we're worth it. I feel worth it. And not just because it's some smoke and mirrors, but I feel the power of new branding. I feel the power when there is a congruence between the experience where every touch point that we have with a customer looks similar, is using the same fonts, the same colors, the same logo, has the same feeling space to it. And that is branding. That leads me very beautifully into some of the slides here when we can talk about the specifics of branding. But that I love sharing that story because one, it's true and it's so recent for us, but it really relates back to the power of a rebrand. And so for anybody out there that this is not a pitch, just if you are thinking about, if you look and if you have grabbed the brand planner toolkit, there's actually a brand audit section in there where you can look through your different assets that you have, social media platforms, your website, and start rating it and just say, looking from one to the other, is there congruence here? Does it match? Does it have the same feeling space? We like our branding to feel light and airy and fresh. And the last thing I want it to feel is heavy. So when you're interacting with our documents, if you're interacting with our slides today, what you're going to feel is a light spaciousness. So do your documents feel like that? When someone gets a questionnaire, we like to make sure that our branding experience delights at every turn, with every, even if emails are canned that we send, even if it's a template, does it have personality? Does it sparkle? Does it make our users feel good? And we get that feedback, and I want to have the same for you. So if you're on the fence, not sure whether it's, whether you should spend it or not, I do have a slide with a quote coming up that is going to showcase how important it is. I'm going to show you right now. It is this one. It's from Steve Forbes. He's the editor-in-chief of Forbes magazine. So, somebody who knows his business. And he says, your brand is the single most important investment you can make in your business. And I love that. So if you're on the fence, just know how powerful it can be. But now that I've talked for a little while about getting you excited about branding and what it can do for your business, it's time to go all the way back to the beginning and start with this question of what is branding? Because even as you're listening to me, there's probably some questions around like, what the heck is branding? Like, one of the biggest myths that I like to dispel is that branding is your logo and your color palette. That is one facet of it. We have people who hire us who already have a logo, but they still hire us for branding because the branding is so much more than that. And I've heard it described as a perception about your business, which kind of makes it very like esoteric, like in the realm of the nebulous. But I like to say that because I think that what it implies around perception is that we don't always get to control how other people think about our brand. We can do a good job of trying to control the message, but part of branding is outward perception, right? So I like to use this example of what people's perception is of Walmart versus Target. And I'd like you to just kind of sit with your own perception between the two. If you're in an area where you have two choices within a couple miles of one another, you can go to Walmart and get your groceries or you can get I like to use outfit, especially for the women who are listening. You're going to get $100 gift card to either Walmart or Target, and you have to buy an outfit. Are you going to pick a Target outfit or a Walmart outfit? I mean, I know 1,000% of the time I am going to pick a Target outfit. And why is that? Because I have a perception that it's a little more high quality. I have a perception that the designs are a little more modern and fresh, that the cuts are a little better, that the fabric used is a little more quality. Now, is that true or not? I don't know. Is the price that much different? Not really. Target is maybe you may save a couple bucks going to Walmart, but there definitely is a brand perception there. And some of that is maneuvered by the brands themselves. You know, they're controlling the message. It's not unknown to Walmart what the public perception is of it, but it has a clear fan base. But that might not be us who are here. You know, no judgment from myself, but like what makes somebody a Pepsi person versus a Coca-Cola person? You know, branding drives its own narrative, and we can create some narratives, but there's an element of surprise and an element of a lack of control around the messaging, right? And so part of the brand is your perception. But beyond that, there is what I like to call the branding wheel. And so as you can see from this wheel here, this visual, the visual sides of your branding, which is what most people associate as your brand, is just one slice of the wheel. And there's multiple. We could break this down even further. So I just see these as some core spokes in the wheel. The first being like visual logo, fonts, colors. These are kind of more the things in the darker side of the wheel. These are the things that we see more outwardly, right? So like the logo, the color palette. We also see the website and digital platforms. This could be like in person too. It could be tangible things like hang tags. Like if you think of Target, it's like everything that you can see. So whether it's their signage that they have or their carts, or a hotel might have a signature scent. So it's not just the visual, but the things that are kind of in our field. So whether they're digital or whether they're tangible and kind of out in the world. And then we have social media content as well, which exists as branding, but something that we can kind of, it's not so behind the scenes, not so esoteric. You know, on this side, the lighter side is the things that make a big difference, but you don't always see them, right? Because they're supposed to be seamless in the experience. And that's like the brand story, the brand mission and values, which kind of like weave their way through everything, right? That brand story should be a part of everything that you share, the voice and tone, right? Some brands have an authoritative tone. Some brands have a snarky tone. Some brands have a girl next door kind of BFF tone. And this is fun because we're not going to do this today, but when you go down this brand, also brand positioning and personality, like, are you the top of the line? Are you medium? Are you the lowest priced in your industry? What kind of personality does your brand have? These are all really cool questions to dive into. Each one would be its own hour or two presentation. But it makes me think of archetypes, right? There's a lot of fun work that you can do within branding, and Joseph Campbell, Carl Jung, archetypes and the hero's journey, right? So like, where is your brand along the hero's journey, and where are your customers along their own journey, right? So if there's one main mythology book that I just have over here that I can see that is not close enough for me to grab, but it's Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces. Um, so starting to get into archetypes, my brand is, and the main archetype is the explorer. And so I'm always trying to chart new territory. I'm always looking for adventure. I'm always looking for novelty. And that makes sense because I like to think of it as like each new client that we work with is like getting a brand new box of crayons where all the colors are different, or a new box of paints, or, you open up this box and it has like pictures and textures. And I'm currently watching like a show about like a Project Runway type of show on Netflix that I'm spacing on the name. But I love it. Each new challenge that they have, it's like military, and you have to like design something military, but then they open up the closet and they have brand new fabrics to choose from, and epaulets and different pieces of like lace and leather and like shoelaces, things like that. And as I feel, to the explorer, it fits because it's also very congruent with the work that we do, which is exploring something brand new every time that we work with a client. Um, and that's fun because we can work with multiple clients in a month. And so we have different color palettes and fonts and brand story, vision, personality. And every single one is like a new gift to unwrap, so that's mine. But there's lots of different, most brand has an archetype, and then they'll have a sub archetype. Our brand is like the girl next door, which is kind of like the friend, or the every girl or every man would be the same kind of thing. And that's what adds in this fun, friendly, conversational. We want to make sure that when we're working with clients, that we feel like friends as well. And so we're looking for clients that kind of fit that persona for us too. That's why we don't do corporate. That's why we don't do big meetings with lots of stakeholders at the table. We do smaller one-on-ones or small teams. We like to work with solopreneurs. We like to make sure that we can continue feeling like friends, and like that we can just be real with one another. And so that we try to apply that in our branding as well. But it's really fun once you get into archetypes. Are you the explorer? Are you the sage? Are you the magician? There's a lot of work that we can do, and maybe we'll do another one of these coming up soon, where we start talking about that. I saw this thing. This is relevant around brand positioning. Thinking about, are you top of the line? Are you middle? Are you low? It was a study that they had done, and I can't remember where right now off the top of my head, but they had a pair of gold earrings. And this was a college students, I believe. And they had asked them, there was unbranded, just a pair of gold earrings. They said, if you were to price out these gold earrings, what would you price them at? And say they priced them at about $500, $560 or something like that. And then they showed them another pair of gold earrings that were in a Tiffany box. Very iconic. I mean, Tiffany even has trademarked their color. The Tiffany blue is a very specific trademarked type of shade of blue. And they made that $200 more expensive than the unbranded. Then they showed them a picture of the same earring, and it was in with a logo from Walmart. And they rated it $80 less than that mid-range unbranded. And so they thought the earrings from Walmart would be about $80 cheaper, which made them about $280 cheaper than the Tiffany's box, And those numbers might be a little off from my memory, but it's a great indication about how branding, and I shared the story with us, and just how rebranding allowed us to reposition ourselves as definitely not the cheapest in the market anymore, and a little bit up from probably about in a mid range, but we don't want to be the most expensive either. Um, because I don't want to deal with the kind of clients that come from being the top end in your industry. I like where we're at, and I like the type of clients that we're getting from being positioned there. But in every industry, that's important to start thinking about your positioning and how your branding affects the public perception of your prices. And that can be, these are all these things are happening subconsciously. So there's not a lot of, I want to start like my homework for you really is to start thinking about your own purchasing habits. When I say 80 to 90% of the purchases that we make are based on color. And when I hear that, I'm like, that can't be true. But then I start thinking about it and I'm like, almost everything that I buy, it's not that I'm just buying it because of color, but one of the biggest considerations is color. And here's a good example for that. I was looking for a mixer recently on Amazon, and there were two mixers, and one was $25 and it was black. And then the other one was $40, but it was like a very pretty shade of like robin's egg blue, almost similar to Tiffany's, but obviously not because it's trademarked. I would have happily paid. I wound up getting a stand mixer in the end, but I would have happily paid the premium to have the color that I wanted. And for most things, that's the case, whether it's the car color that I really love, whether it's, a mustard yellow that I'm obsessed with, and will I go, a little further afield to get that specific color. We make a lot of our choices based on color. So how are you using color in your brand? How are you using color, even if we have digital products, how are we using color to shape the message and position? There are colors that just look cheap. There is a hot pink that looks very cheap. Um, there is a gold that looks cheap because it's glittery, but there is a gold that looks refined. There is a gold that the light is capturing it slightly, and you can have that in your logo and you can have that on your branding, and it instantly elevates the brand, versus one that's just over here with like, yeah, just a very cheap looking lime color or something like that. It's hard to show, we'll have to do a whole color theory thing, but I'm going to move on from this. Talk about quickly myth busting. We've done one of these already, which is that branding is only a logo, which is so not true. But the other two kind of go hand in hand. Number two myth is that it's only for big brands. I think just even in the conversation, you probably have starting to have a good sense of how good branding can work at any level of any brand. And every business is a brand, even if you're just by yourself, like that is a brand. And that is too expensive. That brings me back to the quote of it's the single best investment that you can make in your business. We like to talk about branding, and I've seen a lot of people do this as well, like around, people tend to think of branding and hiring a branding agency specifically as a line item in the budget, is something that can just be crossed off and think about it as a payment, and people tend to not think about it as an investment. And so I always try to change that paradigm. I always try to shift that narrative around whether branding and brand strategy, which is actually beyond or above the logo and the visual. We're going to do some of that work today around brand strategy. It is, it's an investment. And I like to think, even if just in our story, our example of 3 to 4 times, we don't have the full numbers for the month yet. So that's why I'm saying it could be almost 5 times what we've ever made in a month. And that was down to branding, and so to think that that wasn't a huge investment in our business. And I don't mean like financially, but just we invested a lot of time. But for most people watching this, you'll be investing money as well, because you're hiring professionals to do it. The investment is always always worth it. It can always elevate, doesn't detract from your brand. It always elevates the perception of your services, how much you can charge. whether someone chooses you over another agency, I say agency, but business, I'm just in the agency model, whether they choose you over someone else, whether you're a functional medicine doctor or a yoga studio, or a coffee company. You know, here's a great example. And I wish I had a slide for this, but if you think about just like a cup of coffee, unbranded cup of coffee, it's just a white cup with some bulk standard coffee. And he asked people, how much would you be prepared to pay for that cup of coffee? People are going to say like 50 cents, you know, $1.50, $2 maybe. You're not going to have anybody pay, say, $6. Slap a Starbucks label on that and make it a Starbucks brand coffee, even though famously everybody knows the coffee isn't very good. They're not known for having the best coffee. They're known for pumping a lot of sugar into it. So it's nice and sweet and tastes like really good to your brain. But when the last time I was at Starbucks, I'm not being a hater, I definitely get some Starbucks coffee. But that pumpkin spice latte, the venti is $6.63 in the store that I was at. And so that is what the market will pay. You know, people aren't like boycotting Starbucks and say, there's no way I'm going to pay. I get a matcha latte. I pay $5 for it, like and change, or $4.63 or something like that. Somewhere between $4.50 and $5 for a matcha latte. It's pretty crazy when you think about it because of branding, because branding is an investment. For years, Starbucks didn't invest hardly any money in advertising. They invested in their brand building, specifically in their barista training, to make sure that the baristas were saying people's names, giving them a really great branded experience. So it's a good example about how it's not just about the product itself. Like that is the whole experience. So Starbucks took it from a cup of coffee to a home away from home, to a third space, to a place where people know your name, where they're going to shout out your name and wish you a great day, you know. But I don't think anybody's arguing that that cup of coffee is that much different than the one that you'd only be willing to pay $1 for at the 7-Eleven. So branding is everywhere, and the investment is real. This is the brand funnel. I'm gonna take a little drink break here. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on here, but this is just kind of showing great branding. An example here, Hydro Flask. Why is this worth? I think I paid $45 for this. Would I have ever before, if you had just shown me a normal water bottle and said, how much money would you spend on a water bottle? It's, I don't know, $10 maybe. I spent $45 on this one. Why? Because it's a Hydro Flask and I know it as a brand that's a great brand. And because of the color, this was like an upsell to have this specific one. I wanted to have this like sunset color. $45. Branding, I'm telling you, is the best investment that you can make, because that's what up levels a water bottle from a $10 water bottle to an almost $50 purchase. And I didn't deliberate on it. It wasn't like I was like, should I really spend 50? No, I wanted it. I want this one. I'm buying on color. I love the color. It makes me happy every time I see it sitting here. And I'm buying my perception of the brand, which is quality. So how do people find out about your brand? How do they get into the brand funnel? You see this funky little funnel here where at the top we have attention, and this is where people interact for the first time with our brand, and maybe for the second or the third or the 10th time before they move down the funnel. And they enter through things like social media, through website, blogs, content, if you're brick and mortar, through your storefront, your signage, business cards, meeting people at networking events, being a sponsor at events, through mailing lists, through webinars, packaging, merchandise. You know, there's lots of different brand applications. And the brand funnel is how we take people from attention and we move them into the action phase. And so attention is when they're just kind of getting to interact with us those first few times. Interest is when they decide that they're going to subscribe to our mailing list. is when they decide to show up to a webinar, um, sign up for your freebie, follow you on Instagram, maybe like comment on one of your posts. It's kind of moving a little bit. It's still non-committal, but it's kind of moving a little forward. Then we move into the desire phase. And you can see that it gets smaller and smaller as we go down, because you're not going to capture everyone that you capture their just initial attention. It's like a blip, So how do you get them down here taking action? And action is and spending some money with you, making a purchase, hiring you to be their coach, taking action on their own health. If you're like a wellness coach, or have like some kind of, medical center or healer, we got to get them into the desire phase. And branding can really help with that. And content can also help with that. Moving people along this funnel. And that's a class for another day, because we're just specifically talking about branding. But I just want to kind of give you the overarching view here of like how brands can help move into this desire phase, and desire inspires action, right? So usually around this desire and action, that's when we start either one of two things. We start agitating the problem and saying, this is your problem. How can we help you? Or really showcasing a goal, just like dangling that beautiful carrot in front of people to say, this is what you could have, whether it's like, a ring that promises love forever, or whether on the opposite side, it's, some kind of Spanx that the agitation is just like, I like cellulite and I'm just looking really lumpy under the stress. And so agitate that a little bit, get yourself some Spanx, have the sleek physique that you are looking for. We've covered a bit of this already, but I want to just make sure you see it here right in front of you, so it's crystal clear why branding is important. There are so many more than 4 reasons why. But I would say number 1 is that it really sets you apart from your competition. If your peers on price or competing on price, depending on how you like to look at it, it can really set you apart as having this fully branded experience. When you go to hire 2 different people and one sends you a work with us guide that's beautifully branded and has the price transparency, has everything listed, has the steps of the process. This is how we work together, 1, 2, 3. Or you're looking at 2 competing online programs, right? And one is beautifully branded, all the documents seem to match, versus another one. I think about this a lot of times because I'm a course junkie, and I like to buy a lot of digital products to learn things, especially when you're trying to learn everything yourself for years. So I've invested in a lot of programs along the way. And, if the information is exactly the same and is presented in 2 different ways, I will 10 out of 10 times go with the one that has the better branding, the one that all of the materials match one another, has a really great website, has every touch point listed out, like the process and FAQs, versus like, if the information is the same, I would be disappointed and I'd feel like I kind of wasted my money if I get a PDF that just looks janky, that doesn't match with the brand. Like suddenly I'm on the PDF and all the fonts are weird and the colors are different and it doesn't match the website. I'm going to feel a little bit like, man, I don't know if I should have spent the money on this. And we are always, whether you're acknowledging it or not, it's in the background subconsciously, we are always looking to confirm our purchases, to confirm that we actually made a good choice. So our brains are really good at pattern recognition, and they're really good at kind of creating problems as well. And so as soon as you purchase something, like your brain will start immediately kind of going through the process to make sure that that was a good idea. And this is especially important if you sell high ticket. So if you sell high ticket coaching packages, we do at our branding agency, we're in, and I would assume anything high tickets, kind of like if you sell something over like $1,000, because that's when you really want to make sure that we have some branding pieces in place, whether that's like a really good autoresponder sequence, whether that's an actual phone call reach out from someone on your team whose job is to make sure that clients are happy, or whether it's, sending like a welcome gift box when a client signs on with you. That's something that we do. Um, we want to make sure that when somebody works with us, that they feel within that first week that they don't have buyer's remorse, they're not worried, and we like to show them that they're in good hands. So not only do we value you, but you are in really good hands with us. And it's not just about bribery or sending gifts, but it's about making sure that that purchase feels like a good purchase, because it is a larger investment. And some of us have 3, 4, 5, $6,000 coaching packages. And so how can you create a branded experience that makes people feel like that they made a wise choice with going with you? So it can set you apart from the competition, but we can continue once they purchase with you, continue your branding process so that every touch point with a customer, like that's every interaction that they have with you, is another application of that branding, is another strengthening of that branding, so that they come to expect. I would like, at least for us, all of our clients to expect that when they open an email from us, that it's going to be delightful, that it's going to have personality to it. It won't just be like your bills due, or here's your logo. Like, that's just one way that we can apply our branding, and how, so you can really deconstruct your not only your sales cycle. I mean, even going further, even deeper than that, you can deconstruct your whole social media, uh, the way that you communicate on social media, your brand voice, your visual. You can deconstruct your sales cycle. You can deconstruct how you work with clients, your process. And every single one of these touch points is a way to make your branding stronger. And that seems daunting at first, especially if you have lots of steps. We're doing that in our business right now, but we're taking it week by week. We take one chunk and we just see if we can improve upon it. Is there another document we can add at this point? Is there a tutorial we can add at this point? Is there a way to make this a relationship stronger, shorten the loop? Can we create a better feedback system? So like you would think this isn't branding, but it is branding, because it really influences the customer's perception on working with you or moving into your sales cycle with you, or offboarding, right? As a company for a little while, we weren't very strong with offboarding. And I wanted to improve that. I wanted to make sure that we were offboarding clients just as strongly as we onboarded them, so they feel loved and appreciated and really excited. And that should be the most fun part, is launching the brand. But sometimes when we're, not just me, but a lot of us, when we're done with clients, we're not giving like a strong offboarding presentation for them. So number 2, number 1, set you apart from competition. Number 2, commanding higher prices. We've talked about this a little bit. 3 is it builds loyalty and trust. Are you a Walmart person or a Target person? Or do you go to Sephora or Ulta? What if they're in this one shopping center over from one another? Do you have loyalty to, are you a Starbucks person? Like what brands, what supermarket do you shop at? Are you Whole Foods? Are you Aldi? Are you, Acme or ShopRite or whatever is in your area? It's difficult. It gets more difficult when I guess cars is a place, are you a Prius or a Toyota, VW? Number 4 is it promotes growth through brand extensions, which is just a funny, if not funny, a fancy way of saying, when you have a strong brand, you can create different lines out of your brand. Apple's a good example here. Apple is the overarching brand, but they have brand extensions through their different products, but also through like the Genius Bar and iTunes and Apple Music. And so it's always part of the Apple brand. And this is really good for like course creators. Like if you have like a wellness business and you think about, creating like multiple different courses, you can use brand extensions. Sometimes they're visual, sometimes it's about naming. It's the way that like when somebody looks at different pieces of your brand, can they tell that it links back to your original brand? And this last little thing here is about the branding sweet spot. The branding sweet spot is really, we kind of talked about this a little bit in the beginning, and there's some pro questions here that you can do on your own time, but it's where your business expertise and your target meets your target market's needs or interests is your sweet spot. And I like this little quote. I got to move my own picture so I can see this. It's a little academic, but I like this quote from Forbes, which is your sweet spot is the thematic overlap between what your brand has earned the right to have a perspective on and what your audience cares about. It's in the subjects or ideas that you and the people you're trying to reach can bond over. And so that's, we all have our area of expertise. For myself and my team, it's branding. We have earned the right to talk about branding, and where the sweet spot is where it meets our target market's needs and interests. In previous incarnations in entrepreneurship, my business expertise was women's health, the menstrual cycle. And it hit the sweet spot of my target's market need to learn more about their body. But I hadn't earned the right to talk about environmental science, I mean, and any other topic that you could potentially, options trading or something like that. So my sweet spot is in branding. Back here. So we're going to take a little break here, just for a couple minutes. Been talking a lot, and hopefully you're taking some good notes and getting really excited about how this can, help your business. The brand vocabulary is, we're just going to take a few minutes here. I'm going to put a timer on, and we will write down what are some words that can define your brand. So a strong brand has a clear vocabulary that can be used to define its personality, feeling, and visual branding. So we use this space below to make a list of words that represent your up-level brand. So this doesn't have to be like, I want to think big here, and I want to think about what you're moving into. So you don't have to necessarily describe. In fact, I'd encourage you not just to describe what your business is like now, but defining your brand for the future brand that you want to live into, the kind of aspirational. So, what are some words that I would use for my own brand vocabulary? Friendly, warm, efficient, funny, but just kind of subtly funny. I know that's not one specific word, but it's more like a feeling. Professional, creative, imaginative, an ally, and a true partner for your brand. And so let's spend some time. Let's take 3 minutes. I'm going to set the clock, and then we'll come back together in 3 minutes. I'm going to give us some nice writing music. About a little classical. little less than a minute left. If you've already finished and you did a lot of different vocabulary words, go back and start circling the ones that feel like they're the most important to you. Great. And we are just out of time. I know that I could just have you do this at home on your own time, but I think there's something powerful to doing this together and actually holding the space for you to do it in this time too. So I really encourage you not to just pause and just scrub past this part, but to actually sit here with us. So we're going to go through these 3 exercises here. And let's do like a couple minutes for each one. We're going to start off with number 1, which is how would you like people to see your business? This is a kind of brand sensing. And so I like to feel into the 5 senses: perception, feeling. For me, that's always like the first entry point into developing a new brand. And it's always this gap between where your brand is now and where you want your brand to be. So how would you like people to see your business? What types of clients would you love to impress with your new brand? I love that question. I was thinking about that a lot with our rebrand, is like, who would I like to impress? Like, another way of saying that is just like, if you got feedback from someone who just is like, I love your new website, I love your new brand. And you're just like, oh man, I didn't even think that. It might not even be a client. It could be like a peer or someone who's kind of in your industry. That's like, it'd be like a nice boost. Are there any perceptions about your business that need to change? There's a lot of questions in here. So you can pick one, or you can answer all 3. Again, we'll do about 3 minutes and come back together again. I'm gonna get some more classical music on for us. A little less than a minute left. If you weren't able to answer all 3 questions, or you kind of stopped just a little bit longer. Okay, we can move on to number 2, which is let's talk about 5 senses. And do as many of these as you can in a few minutes. If your brand had a smell, what would it be? If it had a taste, what would it be? What kind of wardrobe? Like, what would your brand's favorite outfit be? Would it have a theme song? And, a little example here, so you can just kind of feel into the essence of this. When I like to ask these questions specifically of clients when we're onboarding them. And it's really fun because I feel like it definitely gives us like some really good foundational insight into how to move with the brand, especially internally in the team. But it can really help you just with your own like feeling, like how can a theme song help you to figure out what your brand voice should be when you're writing on social media? Well, there's a real difference between like a client that comes to us and answers a questionnaire and says, my brand smell would be Merlot and some wood smoke, and the taste would be dark chocolate, and it's already sounding pretty good. The wardrobe would be like a velvet cape, and the theme song would be like something kind of like dark and sensual, maybe like a Leonard Cohen or something like that. Already I can start to feel that brand take shape. Like I can sense into like the dark sensuality of it. The website would probably be on a black background, everything luxurious and high touch with notes of like velvet and gold, maybe. Versus like a brand on the opposite end of the spectrum who kind of like goes through this questionnaire and says, if my brand had a smell, it would be the smell of clean laundry, and it would taste like whipped cream, and the wardrobe will be like pedal pushers and a poet blouse, and the theme song would be something by Taylor Swift. And that, like, I can already feel that brand in like the essence of of white, and maybe like a very light, like a dusty blue or a dusty pink, perhaps some pastels, and the textures of like linen and cloth and cotton, and something like fluffy too, like almost like a cotton candy or something like that. And those are just 2 random examples, but I think it will help with kind of creating the sensation of um, how do you want how can these questions help you engage your 5 senses and thinking about your brand. So let's do 3 minutes on the clock. Try to get as many senses down, even if you want to do touch. Another really cool question that we ask people is like, if an actor or an actress was to play your business, like who would they cast to be your business? Like, are you a Reese Witherspoon, or are you a Angelina Jolie? Are you, yeah, I love this question. Are you just like this kind of like bubbly, like every girl next door kind of thing, or is there like a seriousness about you? So let's go 3 more minutes and then reconvene. Remember, there's no right answers here. No, there's no wrong answers. There's only right answers. And in some ways, there's not a right answer either. There's no right answers. There's no wrong answers. We've got about a minute left. That's better. Just a few more seconds to finish up here. For any of the work that you've done today, make sure that you keep this in a safe spot, because you probably want to come back to these exercises. You know, it's fun, especially coming back to this 5 senses exercise, is this can really inform, like, when you're working on social media, for example, what kind of pictures, what kind of stock photography to use when you're sharing your imagery, what kind of, like, from this holistic picture, what kind of brand voice do you want to speak in? You know, if you're, is it more kind of like dark and sensual and more poetic? Is it really like, you know, a friend and a girl next door? And then I'm kind of using two like opposing things, and it's not like you have to be on this continuum of like dark to light. There are lots of the spokes of this wheel go out in lots of different directions. We do something with our clients that's, it's almost like it feels almost like a sliding scale, you know, like, is your brand a trend more masculine or feminine? Is it more of a, like, an avant-garde rule breaker? Is it more traditional? You know, you think of like, is it disruptive, or like that corporate traditional, more like a bank, you know, something like that. Is it simplistic or is it intricate? You know, is it extravagant or is it more conservative? You know, so you start thinking about the dichotomies, you know, and start pulling that, pulling them more towards one side or the other. And then what you get at the end is your unique brand. So that's why there's no right or wrong answers here, because each one is unique as you visually, you know, metaphorically imagine pulling the slider from one side to the other, and we have these dichotomies. Like, is it bright and colorful, or is it more monochromatic, you know, and with shades of gray and black and white? There's lots of, you know, even thinking about logo design or color palette, there's lots of different like sliders, you know. I think about the one example for me, which may not be something that you even really are aware of, is just like when you're doing design and you're trying to pick out a particular color or you're editing photos, there's the like RGB, like the red, green, and blue channels. And they usually have a slider and they're kind of stacked on top of one another. And depending on where you move those sliders, you know, you'll get a different color. If you like move it really to the red side, and this one goes really to the green, and this one goes really to the blue. And what comes out of that is, I mean, the whole spectrum of color, but that's kind of like your branding as well. This is like how you move these sliders is what you come up with at that very unique color, which is the thing that is your brand. And I don't mean you need to have a specific color, but I'm using that more as a metaphor. So we've got this last question here. Hopefully you're still with me and feeling excited about that. And that's this concept, or this I love to share, is like, and we haven't talked about website really in this class, even though website is a huge part of your brand. But I'd like to think this one question here, I just want to like kind of pin website here, to think about your website, your digital presence, and your website homepage as your living room. And if you've ever heard me speak before, you know that this is a topic that I talk about from sometimes. I like to think about your digital space as the living room of your business. And especially now that many of our businesses are digital and we're not having face-to-face meetings with people, at least not in a room where we're sitting down and having a cup of tea. So like this question of like, how would you like it to feel for prospective clients? How would you like to greet them when they come to your digital presence, And so I'll give you a couple different examples that feel a little like along the spectrum for me. One is like a very intimate living room where there's like big puffy pillows on the floor, probably like a really soft carpet, maybe some like really soft like sheepskin. There's a fireplace. There's some Persian rugs around. Um, there are candles, and the smell is not overpowering, but it's just kind of a subtle, like really nice smell. And it might even be like cookies baking in the background, but also like this sweet spiciness of the chai tea that you offer the person who's like coming into your website. And when I say but coming into your website, I just mean they're hitting your homepage. Like that is them opening the door to your digital home. And who do you have there waiting for them? Who is your 24/7 greeter, not even salesperson, but just the greeter. And so usually that might be a picture of you. So see, you can kind of start to sense a little bit like how this informs the pictures that you have for your website, right? If you're going to get like professional pictures and you really vibe with that one. It's like when somebody comes into my digital home, I want them to feel like I'm handing them a cup of tea, that we're going to sit down intimately and we're going to have a conversation, that I'm here for them, that I'm one-on-one, that I'm ready to listen. That's one way of doing it. Right? Think about the sliders. This is all unique. This is one particular color here. That's one way of doing it. I like to feel that way, when I'm entering someone's digital home. But here's another example. I'm not saying there's another way to do it. There's lots of ways to do it. One way of doing it is to have that homepage feel like you're walking into a 5,000 square foot pristine medical center in Los Angeles, where you are greeted by like a perfectly coiffed person who's just like not a hair out of place, like makeup looking wonderful, dressed, in a white suit and ready to like, here's your, take an iPad. This is where we get your information. There's lots of white space, everything really clean, lots of plants. And there's a way to design a website that feels like that too. It's in the photography, it's in the positioning of where things are on your site, it's in the sense of spaciousness that you have in the site, or density. There's another way of doing this where uh, opening the door to someone's website feels so exclusive that it's like a club that you feel like, oh, I don't know if I can get into that because it seems so high end. It's like everything is just like dark, black, gold, heavy in a way, but just like heavy in like a luxurious way, not necessarily as in like, oh, am I even gonna, you could open that door and be like, well, I don't know if I have the password, but I hope that I get the password. So it's a fun exercise to just start thinking about like when somebody encounters your home, your digital space, and they open the door, how would you like it to feel for them as they peruse your website? How would you like to greet them? So let's take 3 minutes on the clock to just finish up this exercise. Got about a minute left on the clock if you are still writing or contemplating. And these are exercises that just kind of start answering the questions now, but they will be, a work in progress. And so I like to always come back and revisit these. That's why I say have them close to you, have them in a notebook, post it on your desk or in your office, and start to make decisions on this as a North Star. Thinking about the five senses, thinking about the feeling space for prospective clients. Okay, we are just about out of time for that. Thank you so much for sitting down with me, for going through those exercises together. I want to just finish up with just a couple little things. And that is some powerful branding tips for building a powerful brand. I think that we did a good job over this session with answering some really interesting and diverse questions. I think we really got into the meat of why the brand is important. Some examples of how it can help the perception, how that elevates everything in your business. But how do you actually go about branding? And that's a big question. Sometimes it's about investing in a professional like Brand Better. Sometimes it's about getting better at copywriting, breaking apart your entire client process and reworking things so that it has a better flow, so that every touch point with the clients is developing your brand and strengthening your brand. But I think these branding tips here are ones that I wanted to share because they're timeless principles and they're things that everyone can do. So regardless of whether you have no budget or you have a big budget, or you're just starting a business, or you've been in business for years, or you're pivoting your business, or you're not sure what your business is, no matter where you're at, number one is to know and love your clients. Fall in love with your clients. I've experienced this myself. I've heard this many, many times. It's one of the biggest, most powerful branding things that you can do is to know and love your clients, get really curious about them, get them on the phone, ask them questions, know where they're at, know it from their side of the perspective, where they're at with every part of your process. Don't let them be a mystery to you, and love them. So be constantly asking yourself, what is something that we can do to make this experience better for our clients, easier for our clients, more intuitive, simpler, anything like that, or just delight. Like, how can we create, even when you're like creating content, people get really stressed out about like, what do I write? I don't know what to do. Think about if you're at that point, you're losing sight of your client and you're losing sight of love for your client. Think about what they would love to learn. And if you don't know, ask them and they'll start telling you, even if you only have like a couple followers. Number two is to weave your brand into everything. We talked a lot about that today, but just wanted to reiterate that, to weave your brand into everything. So your brand message, the emails that you send, making sure that it's on your website, your sales funnel, your social media, the way that you run your sales calls, your sales cycle that you go through, your autoresponder sequences, which can be very dry and boring. Make sure you're weaving your brand into everything. And always coming back to those North Star guidelines of your brand. And so that's that vocabulary exercise that we did first, where you wrote down the brand vocabulary, even if it's aspirational, like where you'd like your brand to get to, be constantly coming back to those words. And that ties into the third and the last of these branding tips for today, which is to channel your inner Anna Wintour, Devil Wears Prada, like big fashion magazine editor in chief. which is to be a ruthless editor. We are always leaving things on the cutting room floor saying this is just not on brand. It's not on brand for us to share this picture of our dog. It's not on brand for us to communicate like this, or to share this product as an affiliate, or to offer something at this price. Even it's not on brand for us to have something for $17. But you can be a ruthless editor. And coming back to, even at the very least, if you don't have brand guidelines, which is a document that shows like, these are the colors that we use, these are the fonts that we use, this is the size we use for one header versus another. Be an editor with the vocabulary that you created. Be an editor with the feeling space. If you want your clients to feel intimate and friendly, and like you're an advocate for them, like you're a good friend, and those are some of the words that came up for you, well, when you post on social media, come back to that as a North Star. Is this a blog post that's written in the voice of someone who is a friend? Because sometimes when we start communicating and we go to write a blog post, we suddenly become really authoritative. We become really academic. We start using words that our ideal client wouldn't really gel with, resonate with. And so come back to those words, come back to the feeling space, and just keep asking them yourself, like a ruthless editor, step outside of yourself to be able to critique your own work, to critique your own brand, and say, is this on brand for us? And when you say, is this on brand for us, is it relevant to our clients? Because it's the clients at the end of the day that are the most important. So yes, so that is where we're at. If you are still here with me, you are a champion, and I'm so proud of you for being here, expanding your vocabulary around not just branding, but also around your own brand. There's a couple things I'm going to share with you here at the end, and they're all fun, and I think they're all great, and they're at multiple levels of participation. So the first thing that you can do, if you haven't already, is to go to brandbetterco.com/toolkit and grab the brand planning toolkit. That's 2 parts. It's free. It takes some of the exercises we did today and adds in a bunch more exercises. Print it out, write on it, use a notebook, whatever you want to do. You'll also find a photography guide in there too that just talks around poses and how to get the best out of your photography. And then we also have, and I'll send you, make sure that you have the links for this. We've got ways to create some magic together. So there's 2 levels of participating with Brand Better. If you are ready to invest, there's a level for someone who is really just getting started and doesn't have the budget to hire us as their design team. And right now we're doing, I'm doing one-on-one brand audits. It's 90 minutes. You can ask me any questions about, it's really like an ask me anything kind of session. I will do my own audit of your brand. So you can show me logos and get my professional opinion. You can show me your website. You can talk about one thing that I love that is adjacent to branding is talking about marketing plans. And so we wind up doing a lot of these brand audits, talking about the next 12 to 18 months. And talking about like just helping. These sessions are a brand audit, but they tend to be a clarity session for people too. So whether you need a professional opinion on the visual side of logo, website, branding, etc., or you need to develop a social media plan, or you have a few offerings like an online course, you want to start a summit, you are pivoting your client avatar, you don't know who your client avatar is, that's all work that we can do together. It's normally $1,500 for 90 minutes. I'm offering it right now for $297, which is crazy. The amount of value that you will get out of this session for under $300 is insane. Even just starting with the questionnaire itself, you'll do a questionnaire that goes to me. We'll book 90 minutes together, one-on-one. I'll have your questions beforehand. And what's funny is in every single session, we always go off into a completely surprising place, and people end up just with a brand new plan. Some people end up with a brand new audience. I've had people end up with a brand new business after 90 minutes. So So I will make sure that you have the link for that. And then the other way that you can work with us is actually booking a call to hire us. And that's a free call. But that is only for if you're seriously considering a rebrand, a brand new brand. Our packages do start at $4,000. So it is an investment. It's a worthy investment and something that you will more than get an ROI and then some. Especially if my story is anything to share, but our clients that we work with see the same kind of results too. So if you want to get us on the phone, it will be me that you'll get on the phone, but you also, I'll introduce you to my team when we start working together. You'll have the link for that as well. And so you can either book a 90-minute session with me, and that's really great if you're getting started or you're not quite sure, you have some branding questions, you're not sure what to do next, you're not sure what to do in the next 12 to 18 months, or just for 2021, you just want to get you want to have a good solid plan in place. Let's do a one-on-one session together, $297. You'll have the link to sign up for that. But you can also, let's see where we can get that link to, just in case you want to just write it down. I can actually just tell you the link right here too. So we'll do the discount one. Okay, so if you want to just write that down, it's Calendly. You can see it up here on the screen, calendly.com. You want to take a screenshot, brand better / brand audit strategy session discount, and I will send you the link too, but some people might just be excited to just do it right now. Brand audit strategy session discount. You'll get the $297 session with me. And then I'll also provide the link for anybody that's interested in hiring us. And if you haven't already been over to our website, you will find it at brandbetterco.com. You can check out the new site. You can check out the new pictures, the pictures that got us to, fingers crossed, 5 times our not only our revenue goal, but what we've ever made in a month. It's been an amazing month for us, and we're hoping, that this will be our new normal now that we have the rebrand. And so head over there. If you haven't already gotten the toolkit, make sure you grab that there. And guys, it's been amazing spending this time teaching. And I hope that you get a tremendous amount of value from it, and hope to, collaborate with you at some point, and really excited to see what comes from all of your brands. And have a wonderful day. Bye.